up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. And today we're doing another tier list. Last week we tiered every team in the NFC. Today we're tiering every team in the AFC. And we're going to go division by division. We have 4 tiers, a great tier, a good tier, a mid tier, and a bad tier. And we'll go division by division and place each team in a tier. But before we get into that, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing on this beautiful Wednesday evening? Matt, I see you have a new camera.
It's Sponhour like you've never seen him before. I had the weakest camera of the three of us by a lot. A lot of times I was so washed out that I was shining brightly. And I'm not saying that I don't deserve any of the blame for that just based off of who I am. But clearly we could do better. If you're an audio-only listener, I'm not saying watch it all on YouTube, but, you know, a little 30 seconds to see what I'm working with now might be worth your time. But outside of that... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, what camera did you have before?
I just had like a webcam. I don't know. Like a Logitech Brio, I think.
I think that's what I have.
It's not bad. I just don't get very good light in my room. I still need to turn the ISO up on this sucker a little bit, I think. But yeah, like I'm lapping you. And I've got tech on the way. You won't even understand. So, yeah. Theo,
I have
how
the
are you?
same camera. I just don't use it as a webcam.
Do you guys think I was the inspiration of the football know-it-all commercial that you see on TV?
What?
You know that commercial where they're trying to promote NFL Plus, and there's that like dripless nerdy kid that's like telling everybody what's up, and then he's got the same glasses that I am currently wearing, and he's like brunette with kind of a similar haircut, and he's like telling everybody about football, and then his dad comes in and he says, "What's my opinion on the NFC North this year?" I'm like, okay, guys, stop the
interesting choice of division.
I know, and insinuating that his father is perhaps from Wisconsin. I just think that I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think they're following my every move and like trying to copy me and like?
Yeah, I think there's people following you all the time. I won't lie. We know what you're doing, and there's cameras in your house. Real talk.
I thought so.
Yeah. Who makes this commercial?
The NFL does. They've been watching my every move, bro.
That commercial, the kids hyping up the Dolphins and the Eagles. I'm thanking you for that, man.
Interesting. That's just to
right
throw
yet.
Theo off so that he doesn't think it's about him.
Exactly. But I saw Goodell when I was walking the other day, and he was watching me. So I know that it's happening.
He was staring.
He had his big
And
binoculars out.
And they're taunting me, and they're sending me subliminal messages in the film and on the commercials, and there's proof.
That's
so
true.
I'm a little worried these past few days.
I think that's fair.
Fears for his life.
When I was watching film, there was a guy who held up a sign that said, "Leave your house, go down Broadway," which is a street in Denver. And I was like, why would he hold up a sign that says that? So I left in the middle of the night, and I went and walked, and I wandered down Broadway, and I walked and I walked and I walked. And that's when I found a referee at the end of the street. And he told me that there was a plan for me. And then the next thing I know, I woke up in my bed, and so it's just been a weird past few days.
Yeah.
But how are you doing, Blaiden?
I don't know if I'm doing better or worse than you, honestly.
Anything like that ever happened to you?
No, I can't say that it has. I put up my Halloween decorations recently, feeling very festive at the moment. Got
for Halloween.
some pumpkins. Huh?
For Halloween?
Yeah, what's wrong with getting like in the
Nothing
Halloween
bad.
spirit?
I didn't say, my tone of voice was a red herring. I didn't mean nothing by it.
Oh,
I didn't mean it.
Okay.
Pumpkins? There's
Yeah,
nothing. I mean, okay. I guess what decoration did you put up?
Yeah, so I got my girlfriend and I painted some pumpkins.
Okay.
So I've got those. I got 2 pumpkins out front that we went to the pumpkin patch and picked out ourselves.
All right.
And then I've got some like witches brooms in my mulch bed. And they like have orange lights on them. And then I've got some lights that go up the like little pole on my front porch, and they flash purple and orange at night. So
I think that's all hype ass stuff. W.
thanks, man.
I'm not
Look
a
at
big
me.
putting up decorations guy though.
And
It's a
I'm not
lot
really a big
of
Halloween
work.
guy either. I just think it's like, it looks cute
I agree.
in the spirit.
I know the Goodwill section, the Goodwill Halloween section hates to see me coming sometimes. They got some scarecrows, they got some witches and
Scarecrow.
Yeah. So I haven't made the trip yet. It's probably all picked over at this point, honestly. But last year I got some good stuff.
You've had Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new saucy nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're really a heat seeker, try spicy ghost pepper. Only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. I dare ya. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's gotta be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's locations. What is up, hotties? You know that when it comes to NFL football, Stay Hot has you covered. But who do you turn to when you need to make smart financial decisions? If your answer is our sponsor, NerdWallet, then you're absolutely right. And if it's not, then allow me to change your mind, because not only have they spent thousands of hours researching and reviewing over 1,300 financial products, but they have the tools you need to make smarter financial decisions. Looking for a credit card? Go beyond the basic comparisons. Filter for features that matter to you and read in-depth reviews. Ready to choose a high-yield savings account? Get access to exclusive deals and compare rates, bonuses, and more. House hunting? View today's top mortgage rates for your new home sweet home. So while Stay Hot is your go-to resource for NFL football, make the Nerds your go-to resource for smart financial decisions. Head to nerdwallet.com/learn more. NerdWallet. Finance smarter. Disclaimer, NerdWallet Compare Inc. NMLS 1617539. Let's talk about some football.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think we should start with the AFC East, particularly because there is some major news that is happening with 2 of these teams. Let's start with the Jets. They fired Robert Saleh, their head coach, who, he threw 3 interceptions in their last game, and that's why they lost. And, his decisions on the offensive side of the ball have been just really poor. He picked Zach Wilson, and he's just led, a historically bad offense the past few years. So it makes a...
He ran out of money, so he couldn't pay Hassan Reddick, broke ass.
Yeah, I mean, it's very funny to think about.
Yeah, I don't think the firing was entirely justified or fair, not in the middle of the season. I mean, I know the Jets have struggled to make the playoffs, but we can analyze the circumstances a little bit more than that, right? Their quarterback situation has been not great for most of that time. In fact, unworkably bad, we could call it. Their defense has obviously been good enough, and that was his calling card, and it's been more than good enough. It's been an awesome defense. But I have a tough time not feeling like Saleh just got a bad break of, we drafted Zach Wilson, he stunk. We got Rodgers, he got hurt. He finally comes back, and he's just pissed all the time. And he's just mad. And we have to, satisfy him with all of his favorite players, and has to be Hackett, and then it's been a mess. So I'm not saying that Saleh's a perfect coach or anything, but this has definitely felt like, especially in the middle of the season when you're 2-3, you're in a very workable position. I think they're like half a game out of a wild card spot. It's not like they're in some deep hole more than any of, some of these other AFC teams that were supposed to be competitive. So I thought this was a little bit preemptive. You never know what's happening behind closed doors. It's not like it was a pretty dramatic exit for him. But I didn't love this move. I'm not out on the Jets in terms of like what they could do for the rest of their season. And it's not like I think they couldn't win a couple games and then we're like, okay, they're getting back into a better position, because we've seen the flashes with their offense and with Rodgers. He's had, good games. And if they're willing to go make a move for Adams, then I'd feel like really excited about them, at least as, a team that's going to make the playoffs. But as it stands, they're still pretty questionable on the offensive side of the ball. So I had them down as currently a tier 3 team, but I'd hear the argument out for a tier 2.
Yeah, I thought that this was a strange piece of news to receive at 2 and 3. The Bills have lost their last 2 games. Mm-hmm. Did they fire Sean McDermott? He's a defensive-minded guy. And the offense, Josh Allen went 9 for 30, right? Like, fire him. Why not do that? They always fall short. They always lose. I don't know. The Jets have been the best team by defensive EPA since 2022. Saleh has held up his end of the bargain in some ways. I mean, you cannot argue with the defensive results that they've had. First in EPA per play since 2022, third in havoc rate. They do it without blitzing. Where are they in pressures here? They've got to be top 5 there as well as it loads on my screen. But I mean, if you're bringing in a defensive coordinator and to be your head coach, and that's what he does, I would say that he's doing a pretty good job. And how many career-ending mistakes has the GM made? That's where my head goes, is like, Zach Wilson should have been the last we saw of Joe Douglas, I feel like. And then the Hassan Reddick situation is a debacle. And then really the Rodgers situation is a debacle as well. They bring him in. He plays the worst football of his career. You're forced to bring in, or maybe not like you said, Matt, who knows what happens behind closed door. But, I mean, they brought in Lazard and Billy Turner and Hackett and Cobb and Randall and like 34-year-old Randall Cobb, because they thought he was the best receiver available. Like, we know what's going on there. We don't have to play dumb. And it was their choice to bring in Rodgers, and they knew that's what came with it, at least to some extent, or they chose to appease all of that. And to some level, we can't know how much of it was Saleh, how much input was his, but I kind of defaulted to believe that this isn't like totally on him and he made the call for Wilson and all of that, right? No, so he didn't make the call for Wilson, and there are some Jets fans who are happy about the firing, right? And said, well, he's just not a good leader of people in the building, right? And maybe that's true. And I think that they would know the dynamics probably better than me, who follows all 32 teams. And I don't know exactly what is. I don't watch every press conference. Fans of the team know best. But, like, it's hard to be the leader on a team that employs Aaron Rodgers, I feel like. Like, he's a tough guy to get along with. It's
a leadership problem in New York. I don't know how Rodgers is not like the guy you point to there. Saleh's doing his best from what I can see, and Rodgers is just a jerk. Like, he's just been a jerk there. I don't know.
Yeah. It's always lined up to me, like, if there was a culture issue, then it pretty clearly would fall on Rodgers. The other thing that I think sticks out to me as odd is they fire their defensive-minded head coach, and then they promote the defensive coordinator to be the interim.
Well, who else are they going to do? Hackett? Well,
right, but like it at best, this feels like a lateral move, right? Does it feel like anything could get
I don't know
better?
If my problem stands there. I mean, if you fire your head coach and he's a defensive guy, you can't promote the defensive coordinator.
Well, I'm not. I guess I don't know. It just doesn't feel like what is he going to do that Saleh couldn't?
I guess I don't disagree. I guess the idea is that he's a better leader, but I just really question whether or not Rodgers is bought in enough for anybody to go make that work. Maybe there's a few guys, maybe there's like a Tomlin or whatever, but it just feels like it sucks for Saleh, because Garrett Wilson didn't beef this much with like Zach Wilson, it feels like.
No.
Not that I can remember. And it's like Aaron Rodgers comes in, it's like he's got problems with Wilson and their chemistry, and there's problems with Saleh and their chemistry, and it's like, dude.
Yeah.
It's tough to find a quarterback move, but it definitely feels like to some extent the Jets are 0 for 2 right now, and it's their fault. And part of it, I think, is luck. Lance was the guy after Wilson. Would you have been right? And then it was Fields, and then it was Mac Jones. Mm-hmm. Like, dang, would that have worked great regardless of what move you could have reasonably made there? Maybe not. And like the Rodgers move, like I don't even necessarily blame them, because at the time it's like, yeah, dude, like go get Rodgers and see what you can make happen. And it's certainly far from over. I think they're a tier 3 team. I think they can come along on offense, but from Saleh's perspective, I'm definitely frustrated. And if they turn it around, I don't think it's going to be because of Saleh. I don't.
Yeah, I think he deserved a little bit more patience is all. Like, you're not going to hire a new head coach in the middle of the season, right? Like, you're in this holding pattern, like you mentioned, Blaiden, with Ulrich. If the whole season plays out and they miss the playoffs or they get first rounded or something, whatever you constitute as a failure, it depends on how it looks at the end, and you say Saleh's not the guy and you fire him, then I have no complaints. Or even if you fired him, I don't know, this offseason, just to fire him after week 5, after a 2-game losing streak that was right after their most encouraging win in a long time. Like, Rodgers looked, I get it was against the Patriots, and we'll talk about them here in a second, but like, things were looking up, things were looking good. Rodgers was playing well, the defense was playing well. Like, I still think they have that in them. Maybe if with a little bit more time to build some chemistry. It's still early in the season. The defense had been holding up its end of the bargain. Like, they had two quarterbacks in hell these last 2 weeks. I know Bo Nix and Sam Darnold isn't exactly murderer's row, but
Sam Darnold was an MVP candidate through 4 weeks. I don't know.
Yeah, seriously. So I just think if I was the Jets, I think the safe move and the move that would have made sense to me is, like, if you're going to tinker with something, tinker with Hackett as OC. And even he wasn't doing as bad of a job as maybe it gets painted, because again, like, Rodgers needs to make some of these reads and like not make dog shit throws. So was Hackett the whole problem either? I don't know, but at least if you're going to tinker with something, tinker with that. And it looked like that's what Saleh was about to do. And then he got fired. And I just think that would have made more sense, because you can fire him. Maybe the part of the problem has gone away, but you can't get to really fixing the problem because all the other same people are in the building. You're not bringing in new coaching staff, so you might as well stick with Saleh, because he's not doing that terrible of a job. So,
but someone's gonna lock them this week, right, Theo? Because
who did they play? Oh, that's right.
The interim boost.
The interim
Buffalo
boost.
Monday night, by the way.
I will not be locking the interim boost.
No?
I think I have them as a tier 2. I put them in tier 2 if we're tiering these teams. There is, I think, a very clear tier 1 in the AFC with the, like, spoiler alert, the Chiefs and like the Ravens and stuff. And then you get beyond that, and it's like, I still think that Jets are working with enough that it's like, how many teams am I really putting above them in this AFC? Seriously, like, all of our favorite wild card contenders from before the season look even worse than them. Like, Zach Taylor and the Bengals, they're all on the hot seat. The Dolphins look terrible. The Browns look terrible. The Colts, I guess. I don't know. I think they're your kind of main contenders in the AFC. And then I think the Jets are still, like, right there. So I put them in tier 2, Matt, as like wild card playoff tier in this conference.
I think that's very fair. I can get down with that.
I think I agree with Theo, because the way that I've been kind of doing this is I treat tier 1, the great tiers, like Super Bowl contenders. And then I treat tier 2 as like your remaining playoff teams. And I'm like, teams that I think could make the playoffs at this point.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them in the AFC right now that are like once you kind of get past the same teams that have been good,
it's been brutal. It's been bad. It was supposed to be like dogfight for the 9 seed type of conference, and instead it's like No offense. Chargers are the 7th seed right now. Broncos are up there. You know, like it's a lot of teams that we didn't expect. It's 3 AFC West teams.
Mm-hmm. Right.
No offense. But yeah, I can get down with 2. You have to be careful in this conference because there's so many teams that have gotten off the bad starts. You have to really fight your way through, like, who is actually this bad and who is going to recover to some level. I think the Jets, they're not even that far off. Like, if they beat the Bills, you'd be like, all right, yeah, they're like a tier 2 team. But they could lose and be 2-4, and then it's like you're starting to get to the point where it's a tough hole to work yourself out of. You don't get that many weeks in the NFL. It's not the NBA or whatever, right? You've got to start stacking wins. But at the same time, they've had a couple of close losses in a row here that have hurt them. So,
yeah, I think they certainly are on the brink here. I really hoped that, they could build on the Patriots game and not stink it up versus the Broncos and Vikings. But again, those are 2 of the best defenses in the league this year as well. Right. So the fact I think that they're going to play Buffalo, and I think I don't know if I'll lock them, but I think there are a lot of things that point to the Jets going from we're back to now it's over to like bouncing back to we're back again. I really do think we're going to get good play from the Jets at some point in the next few weeks. Maybe the Bills are too good. I don't know. They're still formidable, but I really do think the Jets are going to bounce back in some way.
I think that's fair. Well, should we talk about the Patriots?
Well, let's do it because obviously you've got the Maye news that's important. I want to defend starting Drake Maye. I think that's the right call. The idea that they were going to start Jacoby Brissett absolutely. I'd say the majority opinion right now is that it's a bad idea to start Maye. And I'm surprised you haven't seen it, Blaiden.
I haven't, no. But I've been working all day, so I haven't been paying attention.
No. I'm not trying to hate. But it's like, this is not like something I'm imagining here. No, this is not like Steph Curry can't shoot threes type of situation.
No, the main thought is like, oh, he's going to get killed back there.
Oh, yeah.
And to some extent, he very well may. Like, I don't really want to go to bat and be like, dude, it's going to go awesome. Like, it's probably going to be tough sledding. But this idea that, like, Brissett was going to start the whole year, ridiculous. It was never going to happen. Like, no team is spending the 3rd overall pick on a guy and then starting somebody who just isn't starter quality for an entire season and not giving that guy a chance. I understand there's some concerns about the situation in New England being rough. Their offensive line stinks and their receivers are pretty mid. Although maybe there's some young talent on there that we could see performing better if they possibly had better quarterback play. But at the end of the day, if you're really a franchise guy, you'll go out there and you'll get the reps and you'll get the experience, and it might start out rough, but you will improve and get better and build on your performances. And I think actually getting a guy out there and seeing what his strengths and weaknesses are so you can work on that instead of maybe like hypothetically sitting him forever and hoping that things get better that way is a perfectly fair play. The confidence concern is something that is tough for me to buy into. Number one, because I think it's been overstated by the whole Bryce Young situation recently. And number two, because it's nearly impossible to tell if a quarterback fails because they were just straight up bad and happened to be in a bad situation, or if they were going to be a franchise guy, but the bad situation ruined their confidence and then they could never get it back, and that's why they were bad forever. It just seems like something that's completely unprovable one way or the other.
And here's another point to that. You know what would really crush my confidence as a player? If you drafted me top 3 and then sat me the whole season.
That's not unfair. I mean, like, if the team can't move the ball and Brissett's not playing well, it's like, yes. At some point you got to feel like you'll put Maye out there. And this was always how it was going to go. I think we called 4 games. We got the 5. Like, it's just not that big of a shock to me. Now, I hope that he doesn't get beat up too much. He's going to need to make sure he's getting the ball out as quickly as possible. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of mistakes. I'm sure it's going to be ugly to an extent. But I can think of plenty of quarterbacks who went into tough situations early and looked pretty good. Like, I think about,
Herbert.
Josh Allen. I think Herbert's a great example.
His offensive line was
Ravens
ass.
were really Yeah, the Ravens were really bad pre-Lamar. Like, they were terrible, and then they won out when he came in.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be... It's not always going to be, wait for the perfect situation and then get it happen. The idea that you need to do the Jordan Love or the Patrick Mahomes or the Aaron Rodgers, those are rare, and you've got to have the guy there. So I think you spend the third overall pick on a guy. He's supposed to be a franchise changer. Throwing him out there when he's clearly, the future and the guy you need to get reps and experience, I'm down for that. And I think the benefit of getting him that experience outweighs the potential negative of him maybe losing confidence.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's fine to see Maye. When it was the preseason, we talked a lot about this. Maye outplayed Brissett. He just had better numbers. He had better numbers versus pressure. He had a lower sack rate. So maybe he'll get banged up less than Brissett, even though he's a rookie. It's something that I thought he really did a nice job at UNC, was like sliding around the pocket and moving and avoiding sacks. And he's athletic and he can break tackles. So there's a chance that, the pressure rate or the sack rate or whatever gets a little bit better under Maye than Brissett. Like, there's a chance. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe he looks like a rookie. But we like Drake Maye a lot, man. Like, we thought he was a pretty great quarterback prospect. So the idea that he could turn the season around, it's not. I don't think he'll fully turn it around, but I think that they can get a lot better with him in there. So I said on Twitter, and this is just my general sentiment about it, is like, fuck it, I'm excited. It might go bad. I see why people are concerned. The Texans' defense is number 1 in pressure rate this year. The Patriots' offense is number 32 in pressure rate allowed. So this specific matchup, I don't know, hey, you could have waited a week. This does have a potential to maybe get a little bit ugly, but there are things that you can do to alleviate the pressure. You can call more RPOs. You can get Maye involved in the run game, because I think he's a very strong runner. And it's a run game that I'm looking at the NFL Pro numbers right now. The pressure rate advantage is huge for the Texans. It's 1 versus 32. But I'm looking at their rushing efficiency numbers. The Texans defense ranks number 27, and the Patriots offense ranks number 19. So maybe they can keep the ball on the ground. It can get even more effective with a guy like Maye in there. Do that, draws, screens, like RPOs he's very familiar with. Like, that's what they did in their short time with him in there against the Jets. So if you can get the Texans to kind of ease up a little bit and maybe just game plan more through Ramondre Stevenson and RPOs and quicker passes, and then let Maye drop back in advantageous situations, like, there is a chance that has more juice than Brissett. And the Texans aren't at full strength either. Nico Collins is on IR. Like, they're not going to have him. Maybe Joe Mixon will finally play, but I think the Texans have or the Patriots have a chance to make it somewhat competitive, I feel, or at least not embarrass themselves. And I think people are imagining Drake Maye drops back and his helmet is flying off every play and he takes 10 sacks. I think that's what people are fearful of. But
what scares me is we talk this whole talk and then he gets a fluke bad hit and he gets hurt and it's oh, I told you. And it's damn. That totally could happen.
Yeah,
but you can't. But it's at some point you gotta put Buddy out there.
Yeah, it's football. Sometimes you're gonna face a good pass rush, and you might get your shit kicked in. It's happened to a lot of guys over the years, including guys that have turned out good. But the Texans have their own problems, I guess, is what I'm saying. So this idea that the Texans are just going to detonate him, and win 70-0, it's that kind of embarrassment or that kind of situation. I'm not totally buying that. I'm not locking the Patriots or anything, but I kind of have a gut feeling that, I don't know, maybe this one will look...
In an NFL season where the opposite of what everybody thinks happens seems to happen, this would be the ultimate surprise of, Patriots actually upset them.
Yeah.
Or is it the opposite of what we think happened? Drake Maye is a bust, and Jaden Daniels was the correct...
You've just said that, and now we're back, and I've just said that. It's flipped.
I don't know what will happen. I think anything could happen, I guess.
Anything?
As much as I think like, yes, it's possible that he gets hit a lot and gets hurt. I also think like maybe it goes well. Like I got to lean on what I saw from him in the preseason.
What if they're better because the guy they drafted 3rd overall is good?
That could so easily be, and this is not being considered. I saw this point on Twitter though. They should have waited and put Maye in just out of the blue on Sunday. Not
Fair.
Told anybody.
Oh, and
that would have been
kept it secret.
That would have been way cooler. And then maybe you would have given him an advantage because like the Texans aren't game planning for a rookie or whatever.
They actually wait until like the second drive and then put Maye in.
Brilliant.
No one would see that coming.
Bro, that reminds me of, you remember when the 2015 Buckeyes, when they had Cardale and JT Barrett, and it like came down to like the very last second, like who do they have running out there right now?
Yes.
On the first game of who they'd start, because that was a whole debacle. But
they should
I have the Patriots as a tier 4 team.
Yeah, me too.
So do I.
And I just want to get the joke off because I've been stammering about it.
I was going to ask Theo if you had them as a tier 3 team. I was like, oh, you sound kind of hot.
No. I think no. I don't have them as a tier 3 team. They are in the bottom tier, unfortunately, and they will most likely lose to the Texans, but I think that Drake Maye is going to show some positive things, and I'm hoping that his career isn't going to get ruined after the first game.
We'll see. It will. But let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. We were just talking about them a little bit ago when talking about the Jets. We have the Jets as a tier 2 team. I also was thinking I have the Bills as a tier 2 team.
Yeah, that's where I am with them right now. Okay. It's a mix of things. For me, I talked about this, I think, last episode with their receivers being limited. I know they were missing Shakir, but it's tough to imagine that at some point they don't go up against a receiving or a secondary that they just can't beat, and Allen can't overcome it. On top of him not really playing the world's greatest game ever.
Like
I think their defense,
the world's greatest game ever.
Yeah, I'm worried about them against this Jets secondary right now, and it just feels like Allen hero ball can't actually work if you've got guys out there who aren't going to win and can't trap deep balls and stuff like that. And Knox, and again, I'm repeating myself, but Knox and Kincaid aren't like game changers who you need to completely adjust to, even if they're not, bad players. So I think their offensive ceiling is high, and maybe, again, we can see development from the receivers during the season. Coleman's only played 5 games. Shakir's still young. Kincaid's still young. And maybe they make a big move, although, like I said, I think it's tough to imagine. But I think as it stands, like, their weakness is pretty clear and pretty strong, and their history of overcoming it the way that, like, the Chiefs do isn't as good. And on top of that, then I have questions about their defense. Now, I think it gets healthy, and I think they're a little bit stronger against the runner in the linebacker unit, especially with Milano back. But until we see it in full form, and until we see the receivers really go toe-to-toe with a competitive secondary the way that we want them to, which maybe could happen this weekend, I've got them at 2.
I've still got them in the tier 1. I do. I think I hear your concerns about the wide receiving core, but then I think about all the other wide receiving cores in this tier 1, and I'm like, well, I kind of feel that way about the Chiefs, and I got them up there, and I kind of feel that way about the Ravens, and I got them up there.
That's very fair.
So I feel like, yeah, the Bills have that issue, but this game that they just played against the Texans, they were missing Shakir, and Josh Allen got like concussed. And when you zoom this one out, like he did such a bad, like he was 9 for 30, right? Not a good game at all. But that's a total blip for Josh Allen. Like he's going to be back and probably balling out the rest of the way. And I still think that he's got a real shot at MVP this year and being the best quarterback in the league. Although Lamar and Stroud are also, maybe ahead of them now after that performance. So I think the Buffalo Bills are still tier 1. I still am impressed with their front 4. Von Miller also suspended for these 4 games. They're going to have him back. I I still like them. I still think that they're one of the top contenders in the league. And usually I'm more negative about them, but I don't want to, just because they're 0-2 these last 2 weeks, I think that they were playing really good football.
Well, that's what I'm going to
this.
bring up, is that they also their offense looked bad against the Ravens, which is a great defense, but it's tough that they look really, really rough against great defenses so far. Because I could point to their wins and say, Dolphins, Jaguars, Arizona, it's not the toughest slate in the world. I can see the vision for them being one. I can. But we do have to, they would have to be the very worst tier 1 team.
I think then, they would be on the lower end. They would have to be below, the Ravens as a tier 1 team, because they just got blown out by them. But I do think, if they were to play that game again in the playoffs, I think it would be a great game that could go either way. I wouldn't say, Ravens clear favorites, but, that one went one way early in the season, but I still think the Bills are top threats, so I put them in tier 1.
Blaiden, what do you think?
I still think I lean tier 2, man. Their resume, so far this year, is just they beat up on bad teams and they played one good team. They got crushed, and then I know a lot kind of went against them last week, but I'm gonna have to see them do well against a good team in order to put them in tier 1. Right.
Yeah, It's tough, because this is a question that I feel like will be answered this weekend against the Jets. If they have another bad offensive game where they stink, it's not good enough. And the fact that good defenses can go toe-to-toe with them and shut them down even when they have Josh Allen, that takes them out of tier 1. Even if their defense is good and maybe projects to get better, it takes them out of tier 1 for me. If they look good against the Jets and they put up, a nice 28-point performance or something, and Allen hero ball is working, I can buy into him tier 1, and I can say, all right, the Texans game could have gone either way, and the Ravens won. You're going to have some bad losses. It happens. The Ravens lost to the Raiders. That's how football is. I'm not dumb. So we're almost calling it before we'd really know one way or the other. But for now, I think I'm leaning tier 2.
That's fair. Well, I'm outvoted, so tier 2 they are.
It's a democracy, Theo. It's okay.
It is. Yeah, I made my case.
That brings us to the Miami Dolphins.
They're tier 3. No, I figured that was a fair place to put them. I'm not all the way down at 4. We know how bad they are without Tua. They will get him back. And 1-2 more games. And I think there's reason to believe that they could turn around somewhat just off of Tua and the receivers there. But clearly they have some physicality problems on the offensive line. I mean, that's gotten significantly worse for them. Robert Hunt was a big loss. And then you're missing Phillips, and the defense hasn't been quite up to the billing that we had hoped. I know Tua had a couple of ugly games early, but I still think they can bounce back. And the hole that they're in is not as bad as I thought it was going to be, because the AFC hasn't really like we've said, gone crazy and been as competitive as we thought. But as it stands right now, I've got to see it before I put them any higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got some things to look forward to. I mean, if you are looking forward to Tua coming back, I'm not sure how much I'm looking forward to that, but he will be back, and that will vault them to another tier, is what it sounds like, or at least they're aiming for him to come back. I haven't really heard that he's retiring or shut down for the whole year or anything like that. So he's probably going to, when he's over the concussion and off IR, he'll probably be playing for better or worse, and the offense will enjoy a boost for better or worse. They have enjoyed some defensive success this year in some situations. I think Anthony Weaver has done a nice job generating some pressure. They have a 50.6% pressure rate on passing downs, a 25.7% havoc rate on passing downs. And this is without blitzing a whole lot. So he came over from Baltimore. He's done a nice job, with the sim pressure looks, like generating some of the havoc. You've got some guys on the back end who are good, even without. They're missing Jalen Phillips now, obviously, but I don't think he was having like a necessarily banner season in the first place, coming off a a season-ending injury last year. Like, I thought he was kind of struggling, honestly. So, like, guys like Sealer in the middle of that defense and Calais Campbell have been huge for them, and some of the linebackers blitzing downhill. Like, I don't know how big the loss of Phillips even is because of just how he looked. So. Yeah, I can get down with them in the tier 3 because they are in a hole. Even when Tua was in, there were problems, right? The A-Chain ain't averaging 6 yards a carry, I'm afraid, like things like that. Tua, will he remain healthy once he comes back? The defense has had some successful things to look at, but overall, it's not one of the top units. So I'm not very optimistic about the Dolphins the rest of the way, but I do think that it's fair to say, like,
they're certainly not a tier 4 team. I don't even think that's debatable. They're simply too talented. With an average defense and an offense that we know has potential. I mean, we were putting teams like, Atlanta and the Saints. When I think about like the NFC tier, I totally see the Dolphins as that level of team where it's like some weeks it might be great and other weeks maybe not so much. I mean, Atlanta leads the division now. So I think, I know you're not the biggest Tua guy. There is a difference between him being in and the backup, certainly. He did have like not a great start to the year. And like that Bills game was going bad before the concussion. Like we can admit that. But he's put up better performances. Their schedule, it's not looking too brutal going forward. I think they can come back and be competitive. I think it's totally possible. So I think they're a 3.
Yeah, I would agree. Tier 3. So that finishes up the AFC East. We've got the Bills in Tier 2. We've got the Jets in Tier 2. We've got the Dolphins in Tier 3, and we've got the Patriots in Tier 4. Not a single Tier 1 team in the AFC East. But if we move on to the AFC North, I imagine that there's at least one.
Yeah, it's the Ravens. I mean, they have kind of hit their stride these past few weeks. I know that they got beat up pretty bad by the Bengals on the defensive side of the ball. But, it is starting to come to fruition from the Bengals side of things. Like, this is kind of the best version of the offense that we've seen when you think about how their run game looks. And if Burrow can continue playing at this level that he has the past few weeks, I can almost forgive giving up a bunch of points to the Cincinnati Bengals at this point.
They're a good offense. They have Joe Burrow and they have 2 great receivers. It's we don't have to to pretend like it's anything else. Absolutely.
And then the offense it looks super scary right now. It really does. Lamar is taking sacks on 2% of his dropbacks, I think the stat was. Ridiculous. All right, ridiculous. His pocket presence has even gone up a notch. I think that Ronnie Stanley is enjoying a bounce back year after kind of being up and down last season. We'll see if he can stay healthy. Roger Rosengarten on the other side has been a revelation for them. They've tinkered with their lineups. I think they've found more optimal strategies. Derrick Henry is running super well. I think Monken is calling good games week in and week out. They look like a buzzsaw. I think if they were to play the Chiefs again right now, I think it would go better than the first time they played. I don't think Lamar would be forced to scramble so much. I think they'd have better defensive personnel out there on the field. Like, the Chiefs are missing Rashee Rice now. Like, I think they're the number 1 team in the AFC, honestly, right now. So, yeah, they're tier 1.
Yeah, I mean, they look awesome.
Over to Chiefs. We'll get into it, I guess, but over to Chiefs.
I mean, maybe.
Mahomes.
We were saying
we'll
this
talk about
last
the
year,
Chiefs.
too. We said the same thing last year, and
then Zay Flowers fumbled at the 1. I know how it went.
Yeah.
Nothing else happened. No, I mean, obviously the Chiefs are the team to beat if it was the college football rankings, they would clearly be number one, right, as the title favorites. But no one has knocked them off yet. But I don't know, losing the way they've looked and losing Rice, I do think there's some reasons to be concerned about them as the top team in the league. But at the same time, they're in the tier as well. But I assume no disagreements about this Ravens placement.
No.
Nah, we don't need to spend too much time on it. Another team that we maybe don't need to spend too much time on, the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, also tier 1, man. You know, once they bench Watson, put in Jameis or DTR, they're going to take off, man.
Let's not be prisoners of the results of the games that we're seeing or how the team is playing. No, they're tier 4 right now for me. I like to think to some extent, you know, the defense could really be like it was last year, and Watson could get benched, and they're at least like all of a sudden sort of a scrappy, tough out any given week team. But they have no intention of benching Watson. I truly believe it. They're not going to bench him. Maybe if he gets banged up, they'll be like, we're leaving you out for as long as we can possibly get away with. I'd buy that. Or maybe because, again, he's on pace to take the most sacks any quarterback has ever taken in a single season. He just gets hurt naturally. It wouldn't surprise me. Honestly, it'd be pretty impressive if he were able to stay healthy. But as it stands, their offense has no upside to be good with how he's currently playing. It cannot possibly function. Not in a Joe Flacco is going to go out there and give us a 40 touchdown, 30 interception pace season. Not in a 30-30 Jameis Winston, like at least the ball is in the air and we can make plays. None of that. It's simply not good enough how it currently stands. And truly, the defense has not been to the level that it's supposed to be either. It hasn't been the elite Myles Garrett dominating. We're creating so much, you know, havoc that even maybe some of our weaknesses are masked. Like, Washington just put up 30 on them. And Washington went into that game with the worst defense by EPA per play, and the Browns put up 14. Like, their offense is a disaster. So I've got them in tier 4.
You said it all, Matt. I mean, the offense sucks. The defense hasn't been horrible, but, I mean, the offense not being able to do anything at all is just, you can only do so much. And, like, unless the defense is playing how it was last year where, you know, they were the number one defense in football. Like, unless they're that, yeah, they're not going to do anything. So, yeah, it just sucks. But, yeah, they're tier 4.
Yeah, it's just, I wonder, I'll have to look at the defense more because I don't know exactly what's been wrong with it, but they're a penetrating upfield team that just doesn't really seem to have great results against the run right now. Like, they've been fine against the pass. Like, they're getting pressure at a pretty good rate right now. They're shutting down the run to like a pretty good rate, but like, they're playing the Eagles this week. I expect Saquon to just find plenty of creases, and opposing offenses can control the game against this defense. Like, there is a pretty clear answer. Just run the football between the guys getting upfield, and then, you know, they're not going to be able to score any points. So
the tackling and pursuit has been really bad.
Yeah.
Outside of JOK. So.
I mean, I'm just looking at like the basic dumbest stat. Have they not put up more than 16 points on offense in a single week yet?
Me.
They put up 18 on the Jaguars, which is the only game they won, but they had a safety in that. They put up 16 on the Raiders, but they had a scoop and score. I mean, like, this is the level that we're at right now, you know? Or like the Giants, they put up 15 points. It's been bad every single week. And like,
yeah.
I mean, it's just not going to get better with Watson out there playing how he is. He's going to take like an unbelievable amount of sacks. I don't know if he actually sets the record, but you can't work with that.
I think he might, man.
He's going for it. And then again with the defense, one thing that seems to have translated from last year more than the pressure and the turnovers and the takeaways and all that, and they can't defend in the red zone. They were the worst red zone defense last year, which always shocked me considering how good they were at not allowing you to get down there. And then they'd get down there and people would just score on them. that's what's happening this year. You get down to the red zone against the Browns, just run the football a couple times, and they're not gonna just chip away at it, and you'll get them. QB scrambles really good against the Browns this year. Again, guys getting upfield, maybe focus too much on rushing the passer, and then you leave these lanes. It hasn't been great. They absolutely have to stack the box to stop the run, and that's just not a good situation to be in because it leaves you weak in other places.
Yeah.
They're bad.
So they're tier 4, no question. We should also talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, who are another 1-4 team. I have a hard time ranking them. I don't think that they're tier 4 because their offense is really good. And I will say, to some extent, it's been a rough go for them to start the year, just in terms of getting the breaks. I don't want to say that losing close games isn't your fault. I am saying that being 0-4 in one-score games is tough, and being 1-4 with a point differential of -5 is crazy. Offensively, they looked incredible against the Ravens, and it was a real blunder to not win that game when they had the ball where they did in overtime, like we talked about before. But Burrow can be awesome. The receivers can be awesome. Everything can be figured out vibe on that end, and they can live up to our expectations. But the reality is that their defense stinks. They don't have the horses. They don't have the guys whatsoever, and it's not going to change, and it's not going to get better. And even if I could buy into the Bengals just going full, we can take anybody in a shootout mode and things breaking better their way, you got to figure if they want to make the playoffs, you probably at the minimum are trying to reach a 10-win threshold. You got to go 9-3 from here on out with a terrible defense. It's a huge uphill climb. They're dead last in the AFC right now, off of goofball tiebreakers 5 weeks in, but still, there's not that many weeks to make things up. So I if we're judging them based off of their playoff odds, or just you're factoring in just how the season's gone so far, I think you got to see them as a tier 3. If you're saying from here on out, maybe I could hear them out being as a kind of weirdo tier 2 team because their offense is just such a, it's been money the last few weeks. But even then, I'm probably still leaning 3 if their defense is going to be this bad. So,
yeah, I have them in tier 3 also. The defense just can't hang.
I got them in I got them as the oddball tier 2 team.
You're kind of being kind today. I mean, I'll hear out the tier 2. I get it.
I mean, they're off at Joe Burrow is just playing at such a high level right now. I feel like just going through that Ravens. The Ravens are the best team in the AFC. I just said, and the Bengals were going blow for blow with them. Because Burrow is just balling right now. The accuracy is all back. I keep thinking about the Yoshi Vosh whole shot that he hit where he dropped it from the sky right in the bucket, back shoulder, and Chase is playing at an unbelievable level, and T. Higgins, there was a reason that you kept him around and kept the two of them around. They just work off of each other so well. They can win in so many different ways, I feel like. So, and the run game is looking like it's taking hold. I like what they're doing with Eric All as kind of the fullback in the backfield and running Chase Thomas and Moss behind him. He just is connecting consistently. The offensive line is the best it's been in that I've seen in Burrow's time there, I feel like. Burrow has time to throw. He's making good decisions. He's 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's at the top right-hand corner of all the charts that I like to look at. And I don't know. I just think that that's more formidable than a lot of the AFC teams right now. I mean, I get it. They're 1-4. Their defense is truly, truly ass. But
I don't think we disagree about who the Bengals are. I think we are all in lockstep here. It's just about, does that make them a tier 2 or a tier 3? We're debating the tiers more than
right. Exactly.
We're debating the team at this point.
I just think I'd rather play the Bengals than, I don't know, the Colts, or I'd rather play the Colts than the Bengals. I'd rather play the Dolphins and the Bengals right now and have their issues. Like, if I'm playing the Bengals, it's like my offense better score 35. Well, and it's not that. And like the Commanders did it and the Ravens did it. But I just don't know if that's a formula that you love betting on going up against. I saw Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and some of the old historic quarterbacks have good seasons with really, really horrible defenses. And right now, Burrow's going through that right now. It makes it so he won't win the Super Bowl. Certainly, it might prevent them from even making the playoffs at the hole that they're in right now, losing some easy ones that they're kicking themselves for. But I think from this point forward, like, I still think Bengals games are big games, and the offense brings them up in this AFC.
I
can get down with that.
Those Saints teams that had some really bad defenses. I mean, they went 9-8 one year when Drew Brees was playing like an MVP because they had the worst defense in football. That could be the Bengals this year, and maybe that would make them a playoff team. But
I mean, we'll see if they can even go 9-8, but it's certainly not the fault of. But that's because they're 1-4 right now. Like, from this point going forward, can they go 8 and?
I agree.
Who knows?
I think let's put them in 2.
think put them in 2.
Yeah.
Okay. I won't fight too hard on this. I'm trying to find that season. I think it's 2016.
I think it's every year from like 2010 to like 2018 with Drew Brees.
Yeah, I'm seeing 2012 and 2016 are years that particularly stick out, where they were the number 2 scoring offense, number 3 scoring offense, and the number 1 and number 2 yards offense, but they were dead last in defense, and they went 7-9.
Sounds about right.
So, but if you guys want to put the Bengals in 2, I won't fight you. The AFC is kind of tricky right now because of circumstance, but that brings us to the Pittsburgh Steelers,
who I also think are a tier 2 team. And honestly, I think the argument is almost kind of similar to the Bengals, just the other way around. I think their defense is really great. I think no matter who you are, you're going to go up against them and you're going to have a really tough game because that defense is competitive with anybody. I think their offense is a little phony. I think it stinks. I don't think they have a quarterback. I don't really trust any one aspect of it. You know, there's all the drama with Pickens all the time. It sucks. And outside of him, the receivers are really rough. But I think they exist on the other end of the spectrum that the Bengals do, where their defense is so good no matter what, it gives you a tough game. And they're 3-2 right now. They're not 1-4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got them in tier 2 as well. The defense is quite scary. TJ Watt is having another defensive player of the year type season. They get in this 3-4 and they just can't really be stopped. Landon Roberts is a dog at linebacker with Patrick Queen. Like, they just are farming good players in the front 7. Bond has been unbelievable these past few weeks. Like, Benton, Hayward is still playing at a really high level. It's just, if you fall behind them at all, or if you fall behind the sticks, like, they're really going to make you pay. In the secondary, too, 26 having a nice season, Matt, Dante Jackson. They just... I just don't know what else they need to do to earn tier 2 type love. And on the offensive side, I completely agree. It is rough right now. It is making it hard to bet on them long term. They're running the ball at the highest rate in the league with Arthur Smith, or one of the highest rates. But they're not that good at it. So right away, you're just kind of losing efficiency doing that. You're losing efficiency not putting George Pickens on the field. I get that he's throwing a temper tantrum out there and not running his routes, but what are you going to do? What do you do, right? Like, they respond by cutting his snap count. It's like, cut it to 0 or don't cut it at all, I feel like, or like trade him or something. Like, Tomlin is talking about we're going to get more production by playing him less. It's like, that doesn't... Okay, I feel like he's getting more and more frustrated and probably putting in less effort every rep he's out there if you're got him out there for 30 of the 60 snaps. Like, then you're getting good play out of him for none of it, and he has one reception for 8 yards over the course of a game. It's like, if you're going to draft these like head cases and say, you know, you're our star receiver, you got that's the world you live in. Like, they gotta. Antonio Brown could be crazy sometimes. They didn't play him for half the snaps, and I get Pickens. Maybe he wasn't doing what Pickens was doing, but I just am like, you're just kind of stuck with him, you know. Like, you're punishing him. You want to hold him accountable, but like suspend him then or something. I don't know.
It wasn't a surprise. Like this,
See
it wasn't a
happens.
secret who George Pickens was, man.
I want to see him in New York immediately.
I feel like it's so funny. We get some of these receivers and they're like, oh, they have character concerns, and then like the draft process happens, and then it's like, no, that's all. Like AD Mitchell, like he has diabetes is all, and it's like then the tape comes on and he's like not really putting in effort for the Colts either, and like not putting his body on the line, and like he just was like he was at Texas. And yeah, like Pickens, I don't know if he's like a bad guy or anything like that. It's just that
But he's not running the dang routes.
He's not running the damn routes.
That's not good.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay.
But at any rate,
I feel like right now the Steelers offense has just like an incredibly low ceiling and is also just bad. So
it is. But I will say this: you say that they don't have a quarterback, like, and I get that Fields isn't great, but he is playing the best football of his career right now. So they do kind of have something, sort of. I mean, he's fine enough, I think, and the defense is just kind of tough to deal with. So
I won't say anything more in the Buckeyes hat. That's how I'll put it.
Real
Shout out Justin Fields, man. Go.
He is having the best season of his career.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he's doing okay. So if I'm putting the 1-4 Bengals in tier 2, I think I got to put the Steelers up there, even though if offense is kind of the sexier thing. But let's move on.
Yeah, can't believe I have to put the Browns in the lowest tier in 2024.
I feel like you should be believing it.
No, I mean, I believe it with the way they've been playing. It's just like, I thought we were past this. I thought I was through the woods, but I'm not.
You thought you were through the woods when Deshaun Watson was looking like the worst quarterback contract in history?
No, I thought I was through the woods when like Baker Mayfield looked like okay. And that...
Oh.
I thought I was through the woods in like 2020, and I was like, let's go, man. They're like a playoff team, and now we're back to being like the worst team in football, but it is what it is. You know, there's just something magical about being at a live event, whether it's the energy of a packed stadium, the thrill of a concert, or the laughter at a comedy show. There's truly nothing like it. I remember catching a game last year, one of those last-minute decisions where everything just fell into place. The roar of the crowd, the buzz in the air. It's an experience you just can't replicate anywhere else. And I'm really looking forward to making even more memories this year. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about Game Time, the app that's been a game changer for me. They've had this new feature called Game Time Picks, and trust me, it's a lifesaver. It takes all the hassle out of finding tickets by showing you the best deals on the best seats. So no more endless scrolling or second guessing. Just the other day, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming concert, one I've been dying to see, and I decided to check out Game Time Picks, and let me tell you, the deals they had were unreal. I found a super deal that was just too good to pass up, and within minutes, I had my seats locked in. The app even let me preview the view from my seats before I bought them, so I knew exactly what to expect. But what really impressed me was with how easy the whole process was. The app is super intuitive, and with features like all-in pricing, there were no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you get. Plus, with their lowest price guarantee, I knew I was getting the best possible deal. And if anything happened, like the event got canceled, they got you covered with their flexible customer service policy. So if you're anything like me and you want to take the guesswork out of buying tickets, you've got to check out Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code BLAIDENK for $20 off your first purchase. That's, of course, BLAIDENK for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's move on to the AFC West. We'll talk about Kansas City, the other tier 1 team.
The receiver stuff worries me. They're undefeated. They're a tier 1 team. Their defense has been awesome, and Mahomes is just so good at closing games. It's that simple.
They're the Kansas City Chiefs, and it really comes down to that. I mean, I don't think there was some panic at the beginning of the year. Like, will Kelsey ever be the same? And then I think these last 2 weeks,
the engine is taking a little longer to rev up, maybe, but he's getting there, man. And they're getting done. They're 5. Okay, no, they're 4-0 in 1-score games right now. And I just don't buy that as some like luck thing for them. They're just that good. They're just that type of team. They make plays down the stretch a lot.
The thing about the 1-score game thing with them is like it's a fluke that they have been in 4 1-score games for them more than that they've won them. It's like, oh, they're going to start losing these 1-score games because they're undefeated, or is it they're actually just going to be in less 1-score games and start winning by double digits? That's what happened versus the Saints. They were 0-2 in 1-score games. The Chiefs were 4-0. It's like, oh, is regression going to hit here? Like, are these teams really that far apart? And Derek Carr got hurt. I don't think all the problems of the Chiefs like went away in that double-digit win, but you just see the results, right? Like, oh, it just ends up not being a 1-score game at all.
Yeah. So I don't know if we need to discuss them too much outside of things that we've already said about them. I think that's a pretty easy one.
Do you think the Raiders is also an easy one?
For tier 1? Yeah, I think they're up there. Yeah, I mean, the Raiders... They're, what are they, 2-3?
They're 2-3. They got a couple wins under their belt.
I guess they're getting Devontae Adams back. Like, nothing ever happens, bros. We're so up with Devontae Adams. I feel like he's like coming off his hamstring, and Pierce is like, well, he's still in the building, and he's still a Raider, and he's always been a Raider. And it's like, why did you post Edgar Allan Poe just for nothing to happen? Like, but they're getting it back at any rate.
Yeah.
But they're just because they've got some nice wins under their belt. Yeah, they beat the Ravens 2-3. You wouldn't complain about. They have a nice
win under their belt, and they beat the Browns by 4.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. They're tier 4 for me. I
agree.
They're not the worst team of all time. I can give them that, but they have the worst run game of all time. And I feel like the pass rush has been a little bit disappointing. Specifically, Max Crosby. He's not really having a crazy season by his standards, I'd say. Malcolm Kuntz got hurt. They're blitzing at a really high rate, which you would think they wouldn't be doing because they'd spend a bunch of money. You'd probably want pressure rushing 4 and keeping a body in coverage, but they're just trying to get to the quarterback, protect those corners. And it's just not working quite as well as we thought. It's not bad. Like, Wilkins has been a good signing. Like, he's having a nice season, but it's just not... The defense isn't what I hoped it would be or what Raiders fans hoped it would be. Both quarterback options look pretty abysmal. The running game is as bad as it can be. It's just a tier 4 team.
Yep, I entirely agree. I know they have 2 wins, but that would be like incredibly prisoner of the moment to look at their win-loss record and nothing else. As it stands right now, I agree their run game is worst in the NFL, and their quarterback is Aiden O'Connell. No disrespect. I'm putting them in tier 4.
I think there maybe should be some disrespect. They have a terrible quarterback situation.
They do. It's pretty ugly. I'm not all negative about the Raiders. I think Bowers has looked awesome, and I think that's important. And I like their philosophy on what they did at the draft, and I think it's going to be a process for them. And this is kind of part of that. But as it stands, yeah, they're still pretty rough.
What about the Denver Broncos? Their defense has been quite nice. Pat Surtain has been very, very good, as he always is. And the pass rush has been a very pleasant surprise. They've had a lot of guys step up this year, including Zach Allen. Their offense is kind of on and off right now, but I feel like they're a tier 3 team with maybe some hope for tier 2.
Well, here would be my question. How are they tier 3 and the Steelers tier 2? Because to me, those are two incredibly similar teams.
Mm-hmm. I got them in tier 2.
Really?
I think they're falling into that, like, they're well coached, their defense is good, their very limited passing game gives them like a question mark upside to me, where it's like I just don't know if I think their drop back, like their EPA per drop back or whatever stinks. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it does.
Nix has had some all right games, and he's had some really, really rough ones.
Nix has not been very good so far this season. From front to back, he just hasn't. But he hasn't been one of those rookies where he's at like an all-time bad pace. And against the Buccaneers and against the Raiders, I thought he's mobile. He's done a decent job navigating pressure. It's not like his sack rate is crazy, crazy high, and he's been accurate throwing to the sidelines. Now, there's really been nothing over the middle of the field. He threw, he had some really ugly reads there early in the year, and now he's just, ignoring it, which it's a problem for a QB. Eventually, you're going to have to get back there, and we'll see if he ever is able to do it, and really make some high-level, layered, intermediate throws and some of the really high level stuff that you're looking for. But he's giving you just enough right now. And the defense is really just so great. Week in and week out, they are pummeling teams. They're a little Vikings-esque, right? Like Brian Flores and Vance Joseph and Patrick Graham, I feel like, are at the top of the blitz rates, and it's really causing problems for these opposing teams. These linebackers are really flying downhill. Zach Allen is having a fantastic season in the interior, and when you got all these people flying towards you and they're sound on the back end and your wide receiver one is taken away from Surtain, it's just a really tough thing to solve, and I just don't understand. It doesn't feel fluky to me at this point at all. They defend the run, they've got some just. You started to see it at the back end of half of last year, I felt like. After they allowed 70 points, they were actually, getting better and better and fixed everything, really. And then this year they're building off of that. There really does seem to be some linear improvement here. And as long as people are healthy, they have one of the league's superstars and then a bunch of good role players and a good scheme, and they can disguise things and stay and not be out of position because they've got athletes and people playing fast. And I think that alone, like you said, Matt, gets them in the Steelers' range.
I will say the argument for the Steelers being better would be they lost to the Steelers. So
yes,
that's not a bad case right there. But they're 3-2 right now, and their two losses were 1-score games. Against two good teams in the Steelers and the Seahawks. Their resume right now speaks pretty strongly of them in that sense. I guess if you were going to say, how could this turn out as a disaster? Maybe you start getting more Bo Nix total disaster classes. But I think in the same way, and this is interesting because we talked about Justin Fields and how he's just kind of not trying the things that he can't quite do that well, and is maybe limiting his mistakes because of that, even if it doesn't give him a high ceiling. I think Bo Nix is starting to do the same thing, where first couple of games, what was the problem? He threw 4 interceptions in the first 2 games and was just a disaster. And now all of a sudden you've seen them partially lean into more of the outside game, especially against Tampa. I mean, that's why they were able to really get going there. But it's been a little bit less of that from him, and they've been more successful because of it. So I think that they can be the scrappy sort of fighting for the wild card with a great defense and a very limited offense type team that the Steelers are too.
Yeah,
one counterpoint would be that I do think the Steelers' offense is better. As much as we want to compare and be well, if the Steelers are in this tier, the Broncos probably need to be too. Both of these teams have really great defenses. I think the Broncos' offense is a significant negative, whereas the Steelers, they at least Field is playing consistently decent football. He isn't making horrible mistakes. Bo Nix could really sell this team in at points.
Yeah, I agree. Nick Fields has been playing a lot better than Nick's this year overall. I think it has to be said. I think it's fair if you think. I mean, you look at the offensive. Yeah, it's been bad from Nick's in some of these performances, and he's a rookie, and I think that that's fair, but I don't think they're in separate tiers because you can say, well, the Steelers' offense is better. The Broncos' defense has even been better than the Steelers' defense. As good as the Steelers' defense is, it's not quite a one-for-one comparison on that side of the ball. The Broncos, man, I just love what they're doing. Highest blitz rate on first down. Just get them behind the sticks early, and then you can sit back, relax. Why blitz on third down? This is something I heard Ollie Connolly say on the read optional, and he was like, you reverse the downs. This is something that McDonald did last year, and you blitz early. Like, you don't save your best pass rushing stuff for third down. Do it on first down, and then just wreck the drive there. Like, why are you waiting until the down you get the least to run your cool pressure packages and, like, cause all this havoc? Like, just do it right away. I'm like, wait a minute, that does make a lot of sense. I never quite thought about it that way before, and I think the Broncos this year are the prime example of that, because it's like 1st and 10, and they're like in their first of all, a heavy front, a bare front, so you can't just run through the blitz, and then they're just like wrecking shit, and it's cool to see.
And then their secondary is so good that they can get away with that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So. Yeah. Nope. Okay, we'll put them in tier 2. I won't complain. So
that leaves us
puts
with the Chargers
in tier 3.
Yeah, I'm feeling Chargers in tier 3. I don't know. I don't think that they obviously didn't see him last week. I think their offense is going to end up probably not ending as well as maybe it started for the first couple of weeks. Herbert's obviously great, but their limitations with the receivers are still there, even though Johnston had a couple of nice games. And Ladd McConkey, hey, he's been balling when he's been out there. I've been excited about that. But they want to be a very ground and pound team. I think the interior of their offensive line isn't necessarily strong enough for me to feel super great about that, even if they did invest in the offensive line overall this offseason with the alt pick. And then I don't know if they have the high-level defense that like a Broncos or a Steelers have. So they're a year away from really reaching their identity in a way that like the Broncos and Pittsburgh already have. So even though they already have Herbert, I still probably have them down in tier 3.
We're in the second year in a row of Herbert really having mid statistics. Like, I think he's in the 20s in most of your quarterback metrics that are good. And then you watch him on film, and I'm like, oh, he's still Justin Herbert. Like, he's doing really good things. It's just there's only so explosive an offense with this receiving core can be. And then with the injuries, it's really just and then the bye week that they just had, it really just splashed some cold water on the good things that they were doing earlier. I really do think that this Chargers team is ahead of schedule. It's easy to forget right now because they just scored 10 points and lost and then had a bye. But like Alt and Slater looking so good, J.K. Dobbins like looking a little nicey, early in the season. They got a running attack, I feel like. Ladd McConkey has been quite nice. Quentin Johnston is showing a few more flashes. The defense actually...
It's ranking very highly.
It's ranking very high. I just glanced
at the EPA. It's
now,
a little bit...
Who have they played, right? I think it's fair to wonder, but...
1/4 of that is Bryce Young.
Exactly.
And then it's the Steelers and it's Las Vegas, and it's like, there's a level of that where it's a little bit too early to read into that, but it's been performing well. It's been performing as good as you'd hope it would.
And again, it's been hurt too. Like, I think Khalil Mack is having a very good season so far. Joey Bosa was wrecking shit early and then got hurt, which is not shocking for Joey Bosa considering how his career has gone. But they got some pieces. Like, I think that Derwin James also got suspended for their game against the Chiefs. I thought he was having a really nice year as well, kind of bouncing back from last year. So it's like I put the Chargers in tier 2. I do think that they are a pretty nice team right now. It's just they specifically are an injury-prone roster, it feels like, and the lack of really explosive plays is hurts them.
I think there has to be a limit on how many teams you can put in tier 2.
Why does there have to be a limit?
I will say we're starting to get we're definitely going on a different criteria than we did last time.
Yes.
Because there's no possible way that this many tier 2 teams in the AFC, but the Saints and Atlanta, who are they're kind of mid, we left in tier 3, and we didn't even really think that hard about it. And I could be down with being retrospectively or retroactively being maybe those teams should have been higher. Maybe that was our screw up. Especially with Atlanta, with Kirk Cousins, breaking out and that being the difference. Although I think we brought up in that episode at least, Kirk has to play better, or this isn't going to work. But
yeah,
the way that I made my list was I had between tier 1 and tier 2, I only let myself put 7 teams. Which was
I don't know if you necessarily have to go that far, but we are approaching how many teams are we going to have in tier 3 at all?
Right. I mean, because we still have to get to the AFC South, and I imagine, we'll put the Texans in either tier 1 or tier 2. And so I'm just saying we're on pace to have 8 or 9 teams in tier 2.
Yeah, I think that the tiering game here, where I find difficulty, is just there is that separation between 2 and 3. What is it? Because for me, I really don't have that many teams in the 3 tier at all. Mm-hmm. But in my 4 tier, I got guys that just don't have quarterbacks, which was the Patriots, I guess, for now. We'll see how Maye does, and they've got problems outside of Maye. I don't think it's controversial to put them in tier 4. But then, Levis has not been looking good, Minshew and O'Connell, Watson. These are your real disaster situations. Yeah. Plus, they don't have the Broncos defense to go along with it or anything like that. Then you get to tier 3, and then I have, the Jaguars. Which is I feel like they do have a quarterback and they have a pass rush, but they're not playoff. They're not a wild card team. They're 1-4. They've been terrible. But I think they're more intimidating than the Browns at this point. But
the criteria that separates mid from good, it's great is your Super Bowl contenders, right? Which we've discussed. Then your good teams are your playoff teams that are reasonable playoff teams. And then your mid teams are sure they could, but they probably won't. And then your bad teams are, like you said, they don't have a quarterback, bad defense, or some sort of disaster situation going on.
Yeah, and I think to me the Colts defense is such a disaster level right now. I have them in tier 3 as well, and we're getting into the AFC South now. The Colts defense had a pressure rate of 2% versus Jacksonville. How about that? 2%. The secondary is just too bad right now. The pass rush is just too banged up. That I just feel how can they have offensive questions as well? At least with the Jets and the Broncos, and the Steelers, they've got some superpower or something they can be really, really high end at. The Bengals, they have something they can be really high end at because of Burrow, and the Chargers seem well rounded when they're healthy. So to me, those are my 5 teams in tier 2: Steelers, Chargers, Jets, Bengals, Broncos. They all feel like they have something that makes them special. And then I go to tier 3, and it's the Colts and the Jaguars and I guess the Dolphins, where it's okay, what do they have what have they shown me that's anything that's really good? What can bring them? What is their identity? What
you
can bring them up?
almost go from do they have a side of the ball they're really great at to do they have a portion of the side of a ball that they are decent at? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Or are they avoiding being a freakish, literally worse in the league disaster at something?
And even the Dolphins and Jaguars right now, you could easily put in the same tier as they're lucky that they're not in tier 4. They're lucky. The Jaguars are lucky Lawrence is coming off a good game.
If the Browns are starting Watson, and they're that's what we're going to do. No, they are different teams. I don't care.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. If we're talking about the AFC South now, I made a video for FanDuel talking about the Colts. My Q1 update, mostly negative. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
Not off to a great start. That's why I assume we're all in agreement on putting them in tier 3. I think the worst part of this team, obviously the secondary hasn't been particularly playing well. Obviously, their defensive line has been super banged up. Like, one of the main things that I loved about it was how deep it was. I'm like, dude, they're like 7-8 deep on the rotation. It's crazy. And now they're down to like 3. It's rough out there.
Yeah.
I think the worst part of this team is the linebacker play right now.
Nope.
Really?
No. 44 is a dog, dude. 44 is great.
I see them consistently getting blown out of the play. Like
not 44.
Maybe not 44, but
not
45 is always out of position. 45 is never in position.
Maybe, but I mean, they're 30th, and they had a 2% pressure rate versus Jackson. There's your problem.
I'm not doubting you there. Like that,
and they run.
They run
cover 3 every
game
play.
That is bad. But like, one thing that, like, especially when I watched the Texans game, it really stood out to me that they sit and wait for the play to come to them, and then they just get blown off. Like, they get blown off the ball. Like, they let linemen get into their chest and just move them out of the way. They let receivers get into their chest and move them out of the way. Like, they have not come downhill and made tackles in the run game. That to me is concerning. Like, again, we talk about, like, the one shining spot on the Browns defense last week and in the past couple of weeks has been JOK, because he's the only one that is flying to the football. And the Colts just don't have someone that's doing that I'm seeing.
I mean, there are definite problems with the run game. I mean, I think the leader in tackles this year is one of their safeties. That's not good, right? It's not good
really
if a
bad.
safety is
Nick
leading.
Cross,
Cross, and he's having a good shout out to him. Like, he's doing what he needs to do. But I don't think that's a problem with the linebackers as much as it is with the front four and just how banged up it is right now. And I when I've watched the Colts defense, I've been really impressed with Franklin. The other guy, you might be right about.
Maybe I'm mostly just mad at EJ Speed. Speed has been, I don't know. Every time I watch him, I'm like, dude, like, you're not in position, like, ever.
I saw Franklin like truck the shit out of some offensive lineman a couple weeks ago. Like, he was flying downhill, stayed square, like threw his shoulder into somebody climbing, and he went like flying backwards, and he made the tackle with the other hand.
I'll watch more of Franklin then, because EJ Speed has been atrocious.
But I bet there's a lot of Colts players in the top of the tackles list, because Franklin is 8th out of 137 in solo tackles. He's first in assisted tackles. Doesn't have like a crazy. I'm just looking at the PFF website right now. Doesn't have a crazy grade at all, but he's getting a lot of. He's around the ball a lot. So
Theo unfortunately had to leave just a smidge early, but that's okay. We've already been going for an hour 25. We ran kind of long on this episode. I agree about the Colts tier 2. Houston. Oh, he didn't get to have the
Tier
Houston
3,
discussion.
Colts tier 3.
Tier 3, yeah, my fault. Yeah. Houston, I see as a tier 1 team as it stands right now. They've got the quarterback, they've got the weapons. Their defense has been good.
It sounds like Theo had them in tier 1 also, but when they can't run the ball, the offense feels a little bit stale. And maybe that's just because they want to run the ball so much. But I think that
certainly, but they've been without Mixon, and that's been a killer for them.
Right.
I agree. They got jumped by the Vikings pretty bad, but I see them as an offense that's as high powered as everybody. But if we have the Bengals in tier 2 who have no defensive juice at all, I can't justify having Houston in the same tier as them right now.
Yeah, they're definitely better than all of the other teams that we have in tier 2 right now.
Right. They're not like, if we're going to change how we do it, we're going to have like the feisty teams who are really weak on one side of the ball. Yeah. We got to have Houston tier 1. And I think they're the second or third best team in the AFC right now. And if you told me by the end of the year everybody was calling them 1, I wouldn't be shocked. The Titans, I think, are pretty clearly tier 4. They're in the middle of a rebuild. And Levis is just such a mistake maker. Teams are always going to be able to take advantage. I don't disagree with starting him for the rest of the year and seeing if maybe he can, stop making so many crucial mistakes, because there's good there with Levis. But as it stands right now, their record's bad. Their defense has been better than expected. It has a little bit more juice than expected. Don't get me wrong, but
Did Levis have a clip farm moment this week?
They were on a bye.
Oh, that's right. So he couldn't.
They were on a bye.
We'll be back though.
And then
Jacksonville.
Look, it's kind of this is what I wanted to bring up before Theo left, but because I know he had it in 3.
I also have him in 3.
All right, I'm fine with them in 3 then. It's not the end of the world. I think the difference between a lot of these 3 and 2 team or 4 and 4 teams is not much. Like the Browns and the Jaguars and the Titans and the Colts, whatever, and the Dolphins right now, sure. Their defense sucks though. Their defense has sucked this year so far. And did
you have them in 4?
I think
Oh man, I thought you were gonna have.
They're 1 and 4. They're 1 and 4. Their defense stinks, and Lawrence is not playing good. The reason why they're in tier 3, and I know this is what Theo's take is that they have a quarterback and some of these other teams don't. And I can get behind, I think Lawrence can play better ball than Watson, and I think he could just get better as the season goes on, because we've seen better play from him way more recently than Watson. And it's not like a debacle in the same way, but dude, as it stands right now, I mean, we have to admit to some level that teams are going to move up and down tiers as the season goes on. And if that's the case, and we're not just totally planting our flag, this is how it is forever. As it stands right now, Jacksonville is a tier 4 team that is any given week could get their coach fired.
That's kind of where I'm leaning, is that I think firing Doug Peterson is on the horizon, and that makes me optimistic. Because unlike with the Jets, where I feel like firing their head coach is a kind of non-consequential move, I feel like firing Doug Peterson would legitimately help Jacksonville. Yeah. And so I'm I think yes, right now they feel like a tier 4 team, but I feel like they're in my heart and soul, they're a tier 3 team.
Maybe I just, I don't know what I wish. Theo's usually the one with the pressure rates. I feel like their pressure has not been fantastic. I could totally be off.
I don't have those numbers up.
Hold on, let me fact check myself
Theo
real
does
quick
have
so I don't
them
say
up. You're
something
right.
silly. I'm usually counting on him.
I can tell you their defensive EPA against the pass is the second worst in the NFL behind the Rams.
Right, and their secondary doesn't really move me either. It's not the greatest defense in the world, like I said.
Oh, my bad.
So,
their drop back EPA is the worst in the NFL. Their total defensive EPA is second worst in the NFL behind the Rams.
Right. So and they've just struggled to close out games, and we've talked about how their offense just can't get everything together.
You know what, Matt,
they just don't have any consistency.
I'll switch up. You know what? I'll switch up. We'll put the Jags in tier 4.
Very fair.
Yeah.
They did just have they did just put up 37 on the Colts. It's the Colts, but shout out to them. So and I'll say this: Brian Thomas Jr. is awesome.
They lost to the Browns.
They lost to the Browns. Brian Thomas Jr. is awesome. He's great. If you redrafted right now, I wonder how high he would go. He's ridiculous, and you watch him for 1 second, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe he can move like that.
He's great.
But yeah, I think overall the team's been pretty rough. I don't know if any Jaguars fans would object to us putting them in tier 4 or 3 or whatever.
I've never met a Jags fan in my life, so
I think I feel like I have.
I haven't, but I've never been to Jacksonville. So
you want to call it?
Let's call it, man. We're putting the Jags in tier 4 then?
Sure.
Okay, tier 4 Jags. So I'll run through the tier list real quick, and then we can get out of here. In tier 1, we have the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Texans. In tier 2, we have the Jets, the Bills, the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Broncos. In tier 3, we have the Colts, Dolphins, and Chargers. And in Tier 4, we have the Patriots, the Browns, the Raiders, the Titans, and the Jaguars. And with that, thank you all so much for tuning in. Sorry Theo had to leave early, but we held down the fort. And until next time, as always, we will catch you on the flippity flop.